Today's guest is Bryan Gottlieb. He's the editor of online news at Engineering News Record. All right, Bryan, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tat. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I love your background, a staff writer for Adweek, all sorts of other publications, most recently, I guess in the roofing industry and now with ENR.
Yeah, it's kind of run the table on various industries, and
Yeah,
then
for
a
sure.
little bit of consumer news in between.
Yeah, when we were talking, we were joking about, you know nothing, but you're good at figuring things out.
So I'll share with you my Stephen Hawking's version of the theory of everything. Uh, Unless it's something hyper specific like cardiothoracic surgery, right? If it's general enough, the best person to find to get an answer is a reporter because they know how to find the answers.
Yeah. So what's that process look like for you? Like let's come up with a topic, and then let's see what would you go through. Who would you sort of find to ask? Like, what's that process? Let's pick a just a random
Sure.
topic.
So I don't know. There's let's say that well, let's take transportation and uh, you know, I mean, there's the Gateway project taking place that's building a new tunnel from New Jersey to the west side of Manhattan. Um, you know, there's an incredible amount of uh, source material uh, available online, from environmental impact statements to procurement, so on and so forth. So a lot of it is just digging. And this is where I will applaud the advent of artificial intelligence in helping that out. What would have once taken me 4 hours to find the right link, I could find in 5 minutes, which which has been a real time saver. But generally speaking, you know, either I'll see a local report on something, and then I will start digging in to find all the primary source material I could find, whether that's through state departments, federal departments, county municipal filings, and then depending on what the circumstances, I have like a go-to engineering firm that I'd call. I have a go-to uh, construction attorney who I would call. I have people whose credibility and bona fides have already been established, and whose judgment and assessment I trust. And so I would reach out to those people, and then from there see where the story takes me. Uh,
Yeah,
you know, there mm, somebody knows something. It's just a matter of finding that person.
sure. What's the you've been at this a while. What's the kind of current scale of what that call it advisor network? What is that? Are we talking about 10 people, 50
Mm.
people? Like what does your network look like for, picking up the
It's that's a good question. My network, uh, it's I guess how many spots do you have on your speed dial, right?
phone?
Probably my core network is relatively small because uh, you know I can barely keep up with my own life. So to maintain 30 or 40 relationships is tough. But uh, you know I know that I can say, "Hey, Tat, I'm working on this story. Do you know anyone who can weigh in on the topic?" And I happen to work with some of the most industrious and and experienced professionals covering this sector. ENR is inarguably the gold standard for construction and engineering reporting. So those resources alone, I have centuries worth of experience surrounding me, and that's just on the national desk.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's say, there's the referrals, right? Which, you have a core network, their referrals, your organization, their referrals. But let's say you can't find anything through those sources. How do you figure out, who the expert is and if they're credible? What sort of things do you look for? How do you assess that?
Good question. In terms of credibility, uh, you know, I I I hate to employ that maxim of not judging a book by its cover, but I also know that if I'm talking to an attorney at Skate and Arps, chances are they're credible versus a solo practitioner who may have some real insight, but does their voice carry the weight to readers? I think as an editor, one of the jobs that we have is to balance and weigh the efficacy of every source we use. Um, if somebody states something that is outlandish enough that it requires me to then double check that sourcing, I'm it takes a lot for there to be a there, if you understand.
Sure.
It's the whole Occam's razor principle, right? Like, what's the easy, what's the most likely answer? The one that's most logical and likely easiest. So there's you know I, I think there's also just kind of an intuitiveness when you do this long enough. You kind of know uh, when you're getting misled, or there's just a lot of like PR purple prose gobbledygook that if you reduce it down to its lowest common denominator, you're like, well, you're telling me this is the best product since sliced bread, but other than your word, how why should I trust you? Why should readers trust you?
Yes.
And I think that's why analysts are always the stars of the show, because they are third parties and they have no horse in the race.
Yeah, for sure. With the topic that you cover on ENR, what are some interesting ones that go top of mind for you?
Um, okay, sure. Uh, oh gosh, breaking news. It really it just runs the table. But uh, as we were discussing before we went on air, uh, the the president's decision to demolish the east wing of the White House has really just captured. It's in the zeitgeist. It really it embodies what has taken place over the course of the last 40 some odd days as the government's been shut down, and and as the uh, as the structure was being dismantled, I had a thought in my head. Well, what if at some point some Congress, not necessarily the current Congress, but some Congress decides to look into how how any president could unilaterally uh, change the footprint of the White House. I mean, it's arguably an unprecedented step unilaterally to do. And then I thought, well, uh, if anything, if there was anything amiss, statutorily, it's murky. There's no specific law that states you may not change the footprint of the White House unless A, B, and C are met. It's really been more a governance by norm instead of statute, which now we see what happens when we rely upon norms. But my thought was, well, if the president enjoys, pretty broad-based immunity while in office, taking actions as president, what exposure, if any, do any of the contractors attached to the project face, if any? I don't know. And frankly, because this is just unprecedented and singularly unique, it's been really hard to nail down somebody to say, well, yes, this could happen, or yes, this will happen. Um, yeah, in in the in the macro picture, uh, the threshold to hold a contractor liable for uh, for actions that may run afoul is pretty steep. There has to be intent. There has to be knowledge and a willingness to still proceed. That's my interpretation. That's not the not quoting statutorily, but it's something that I think it goes to one of the principal elements that contractors always try to mitigate, which is risk. Um, and depending on depending on what side of the political spectrum you're on, I think really colors how you would approach that. I've gotten well, ENR has received feedback that has applauded putting that out there as the thought piece it was meant to be. I've had some we've had some readers who have looked at it from a very partisan lens on the right, who are asserting that the president either needed no authority or that there's some top secret element to this that can't be disclosed, which the former's opinion, the latter is it's both highly speculative and is not even really applicable because if that was the case, it still would not negate the process that presidents have previously gone by, from Roosevelt, from FDR through President Obama, uh, consulting with Congress, with the National Park Service, and all those steps in between. This like it's to me, it's a fascinating story, and I was asked, well, how was the president able to do this? Really, just kind of unchecked, and I think the answer, my assessment is twofold. A, this is being privately funded, whereas typically the president, the executive, would go to uh, his or her counterpart, which would be Congress, to ask for appropriations, in which case Congress then plays an oversight role. Well, that didn't happen in this case because this is being funded by president and a host of donors. Again, unprecedented. Um, and those donors lead to other questions about procurement and conflicts of interest. Because if you have dealings with the government and those are not disclosed, well, then you're running afoul of procurement rules.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, obviously, this topic's going to bring a lot of discussions on both ends. As a thought piece, like, what are some rules, practices you follow when you're creating a thought piece?
um, I don't do many thought pieces because uh, analysis analysis you have to really be confident in understanding what you're talking about. And I always try to not get ahead of my skis. In this particular instance, I I look at the facts and where those facts extrapolated out may lead. And it in consultation with people who know more than me and can provide context and insight. Um, but analysis is important. I can tell you the news, but that doesn't always tell you how it's applicable or what the downstream effects of that news may be. So, depending on the topic, uh, is when I think an analysis would be appropriate.
Yeah, interesting. This is related to risk in, which is in construction. It's a big topic no matter what, right?
Always.
Everyone's trying to figure out and mitigate or pass on risk, right? I mean, I think a lot of I guess the breaking reporting is when, things can go bad, right? And then basically, who did it, what's the blame and stuff like that.
Well, let's see. Today is November 12th, right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The days just kind of melt into the other. There, a new bridge in China just suffered a catastrophic collapse of one of its sections. Uh, thankfully, all indications are that nobody was injured, but the video is pretty dramatic. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. Um, but yeah, when something like that comes up, uh, that opens up a whole secondary set of questions, including risk. Well, what may have been missed that led to that, or what mitigation steps could have been taken to have prevented it in the first place? And, it's a breaking story, so we don't have many answers yet. But yeah, no, risk is, it's arguably the single greatest variable that can cause a project to capsize very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm thinking about risk. I mean, as a content, sort of company. I mean, what are the risks involved? Obviously, you're trying to get the most correct information out there, but
Mm.
you may not always have direct access to what you're doing. How do you view risk in terms of covering these various things?
Well, risk for a journal is much different than risk for a contractor. Uh, Not the least of which is um, like there's no monetary quantifiable number you can put on your reputation, and so I guess I'll go back to I don't know, like what I learned as an undergraduate. Uh, the best way to defend yourself from defamation or libel is to tell the truth, is to report the truth. Um, and ENR standards are they're very high. Uh, we don't speculate. Uh, we don't report innuendo, and we certainly put information out there that we can't back up by fact or by attribution. So yeah, I hadn't really thought about those measures as risk mitigation. I think about I think about those elements as best practices, particularly in the fragmented media environment that we find ourselves. We're on one of tens of thousands of podcasts that take place around the world every day, right? So people have a choice on where they're finding their information. Uh, Therefore, as journalists, we have a responsibility to ensure that what we are reporting is grounded in fact, free of implicit or explicit bias, and provide different perspectives that can help the reader frame the narrative in a way that makes sense in a larger picture. And frankly, I think it really you could take that sentiment and tie a direct through line to news hygiene. You know, you can feel like you're the most informed person in the world, but if your information is coming solely from uh, TikTok, videos or Instagram, to me, that that does not meet a threshold where I would feel confident to then say, "Oh, well, Tat, I learned X, Y, and Z, from trusted sources." You know, maybe my threshold is too high. I don't know, but I would rather not report something than put something out there that's inaccurate.
Yeah. You work with a lot of contributors, right? Whether they're, I guess, work for you directly or I think freelance or I guess submissions, I guess?
So, well, we don't take a ton of unsolicited submissions. We have a stable of freelancers around the world, and we have freelancers who've been with us for a while. We have former staff writers who will now freelance. Because I cover breaking news as the online editor. I'm not assigning out many stories. I'm usually uh, I don't want to take anything away from air traffic controllers because their job is much harder than mine, and I'm glad to learn that they will be getting their back pay. Uh, but I do a lot of traffic. I'll something will come across my desk, and if it's technology, I'll send it to the tech desk. If it's government, I'll send it to the government desk. And depending on the bandwidth of my colleagues, I'll either cover it or they'll cover it or it'll be assigned out. But uh, yeah, you know, longtime readers of any publication, not just DNR, you you start to know those bylines and develop a relationship with the people behind those bylines, and that's where getting back to the conversation earlier about risk management as a journalist and maintaining one's reputation. I guess that's where the payoff is when a reader will say, "Oh, Bryan Gottlieb wrote this, so this must be accurate and important." At least I hope you're thinking that, readers.
Awesome. And so working with your peers, I mean, just your personal opinion, I mean, at some level, whether you're in construction or in other industry, there's always companies now have some aspect of content strategy in that. I mean, what type of individuals or specific skills or attributes you attribute to people that consistently put out good content?
Um, uh, like people, as in like people who work for companies putting out content for companies.
Yeah, like you deal with you collaborate with lots of people that create content consistently in volume. I mean, what type of individual or skill set, not just writer, but like what's that kind of skill set if, a company is looking to hire someone or whatnot, like
Mm.
what's that combination that's kind of you see common in people that do good work in the content area?
I can't speak for people who are creating content for consumers.
Sure.
And speak to my my peers on uh, the other side of my perch, where those would be publicists, right? And I think that I think that the qualities that go into being an effective publicist, s- someone who is hired to get one's company's information out into the ecosystem, include understanding the audience that they are pitching to. I mean, if I've told you how many press releases I've seen about wedding dresses or the hottest new gastro trend in Barcelona, well, they're interesting. They're completely irrelevant to me. So uh, understanding understanding the audience in crafting a pitch that will draw me in, and if it's going to draw me in, I know that it will also draw the reader. And it may not pan out. It may not end up becoming a story. But those two elements alone are hallmarks of somebody who knows what they're doing. And then really just providing the salient information that makes my job easier, whether that's a series of quotes from various players or where more information can be found or particular artwork that would be relevant to a story. Um, I guess I'm going to employ the Powell doctrine. You'll pardon the you'll you'll pardon the analogy, but good work like pornography. You know it when you see it, right? And so I I can't I can't bullet point everything that goes into what makes an effective communicator successful, but it's understanding how to communicate in the uh, clearest, most simple way possible with all the information that you have at the ready. Um,
Yeah, well said. I love that. Perfect, Brian. Is there anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you?
hmm. I I don't know if we have enough time for that, but but no, I love what I do. I love this industry. I think that infrastructure is the unsung hero of why America dominated the 20th century and can potentially enjoy another century of Pax Americana if we realize what makes us better collectively. I'll end with this. I was in Mumbai in September for an infrastructure conference, and uh, one of the breakout speakers opened with a line that is often attributed to President Kennedy, and it turns out I couldn't find any place where he said this, but the sentiment is uh, the sentiment sums up what I said in my preambles. America does not have roads because it's rich. America is rich because of its roads. And swap out roads for high-speed rail, for tunnels, for uh, you know, clean energy production. Anything that involves infrastructure is a capital investment in our future, and we are giving it the short shrift, and it should be as much a priority to the American public as healthcare, as affordability, as anything else that we value. If our bridges and roads and rail crumble, we may as well, move to, I don't know, Central Asia and live in huts. I don't know. I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but infrastructure gets the short shrift, and I think it deserves to be front and center.